Welcome everybody to the Voices of the Underground. We are here with Crypto Hippie, Bren, and Jacob, and they're going to introduce the project to us.
So introduce yourselves and a little bit about yourselves, and then we're good.
I'm Bren. I've been a developer since people like tech for years. I've only been kind of distantly connected to the crypto community, but years and years ago, I was on IRC chats and into kind of the pre-blockchain world of underground stuff, into steampunk and cyberpunk and fantasy role-playing games and all. I mean, I was like a true nerd and an artist. And part of my evolution has been kind of that fusion of guy who likes to rock out with a guitar and draw pictures, but also gets paid to code because that's what people pay to do. They don't really pay to play guitar and draw pictures, as much as I feel that that's wrong with the world. And then I moved to Asia because I wanted to, it's a big world out there, and that's where I met Fadat. And I've been bouncing around Asia and a little bit in Europe for the last couple of years. So I'll hand it over to Fadat.
All right. So my background, from Buffalo, New York originally, and then I kind of began traveling the world. I've always been really into the tech scene and even more specifically the scene that kind of bred the cryptocurrency scene. So, I for example, I had a Yodel bank account. I don't know if that means anything to anybody here, but that's certainly a thing.
I thought you said Yoda.
Oh, Yodel Bank. They were it's really basically a precursor to Bitcoin. They were trying to, create a e-money system using gold as a proxy for value and da-da-da-da-da. But the whole point is that this sort of thing has always been an interest of mine. And let's see, the last couple of years, in 2012, I moved to China. I taught actually high school history and economics there and got really into Chinese e-commerce. I mean, like kind of crazy into Chinese e-commerce, and soon had a large collection of weird Chinese hardware that I wanted to make software for. And kind of at the end of 2 years, I left that job, go and actually do that. And that led to this.
Nice. Awesome.
And I'm Forrest. My name's Crypto Hippie on here. But anyways, I got was not into much technology at all until I was working on a weed farm and got paid in Bitcoin.
That's so dope.
That was about 2012. And so from there, I basically just started to learn about Bitcoin and blockchains. And then my goal since then has been, how do we bring this to the people? And, I think when I found Steemit, I said, oh, this is a way to bring it to the people. This is and so now we're moving forward with this new project, and I came out here to Cambodia to work with these guys and code on the blockchain. We're trying to make it very easy for people to build apps on top of our chain. So yeah, bring it to the people.
So Dawn is a creative communities project. Essentially allowing people to create both on the platform and off, and receive crypto tokens in exchange for their, creative work, and basically, as a driver of the community. In many ways, it's similar to Steam.
Now, let me ask you this. Is it supposed to work with Steam, or is it in competition for Steam? So is it in competition with Steemit, or is it working with Steemit?
I don't know. That's a really good question. Good question. Let me talk about the ways in which it is either. And then, you tell me, right? So we are like Steemit in that we're markdown based. We are unlike Steemit in that we have no vote concept. Although that's not finalized, we're considering having a vote concept where all votes are the same, but we don't have a concept of a vote. Instead, we base things on views and usage.
Okay, guys, so let's back up, because I think we've kind of gone down the wrong path here to really talk about this project. So there was a lot of stuff that inspired this project, and that's part of why people are talking right now about the white paper that's gotten revised over and over and over again as we figure out how we want to approach things. And so there's a lot of questions that we have to answer but there is a guiding philosophy, and we're using that and trying to figure out day by day the best way to achieve it. So we should really start there. So there's this idea that people don't want to be censored. People want privacy. People want a variety of things. And right now there are a bunch of social network systems out there, right? Like you can be on Twitter, Facebook, Steemit, and there's some real downsides to being on, say, Facebook and Twitter and things like that, especially Facebook, in that all your data is basically given to a corporation to do with as they will, and you get nothing except being advertised to and the right to use their system, right? So they make money and you get a way to have chat messages with your friends in a more convenient way. And, 10 years ago, when a big chat message system was, I guess, kind of hard, but not really, maybe that made more sense. But people are waking up to the fact that that's actually not the best of deals, right? And then Steemit came along, and it was like, well, it isn't a good deal. Steemit had problems. So a lot of us who are in this project met via Steemit. And we've been saying, look, there's some real issues economically and otherwise with Steemit for a while, but also some stuff we really, really liked. So here's what we really, really liked. We really, really liked the idea that users could participate and get rewards for their participation. And we really, really liked that it was more secure and that there was a token. There was like a thing that you could trust there to some extent in terms of getting something for your content. What we didn't like is what everyone called the whale problem, where there was a couple people running the show and it overwhelmed them to basically direct the money of the site to certain things they liked, and that it didn't quite work for this thing we couldn't put our finger on, but we knew it was there. And so that was one of the questions we've been trying to figure out to guide our philosophy. Like, there's this thing that we know is kind of wrong, but we couldn't put our finger on it. And it's been the last couple of days that we've put our real finger on it, not just for Steemit, but also the other sites as well. And the white paper hasn't been updated to reflect any of this. This has been really recent. We've been really busy. But
tell us what would be the difference for the Ray and the Don. What is the actual economic difference then, that it wouldn't have the same problem as Steem?
Right. So that goes to the guiding philosophy. So if you read the Steemit white paper, there's an entire economic model in there where you have basically exponential rewards. And what you have is what we would call the superstar effect. Someone gets enough followers, enough power, and their friends have enough power, and they get a lot of rewards with the system. And in some ways that's fair, but in other ways it's not. And in other ways it's really disruptive and can cause big power imbalances that we feel are bad. And so so we were like, well, why is it bad? What's the real problem? And the real problem is that it doesn't actually really foster community. If you have kind of your superstars and everybody else, then you don't really have the same level of community connection that you'd like. And the other thing is it rewards only a specific type of thing. It rewards likes, but if someone has content that's valuable for like 3 years, they don't get remunerated the same way someone who just throws something in there does that everyone likes for a minute, but it's really a flash in the pan, or they're just well known, or it's bots.
That's
and
true.
that was another problem, right?
So there's an element of tipping on this platform, right?
Yeah, so we want to encourage a whole lot of things. So finally getting back to the original thing I started about with the guiding philosophy is we want to encourage human connection, right? We want to encourage actual humans to connect. A lot of what happens on Steemit is just bots running around voting, and it's an economic platform for voting on content, but it doesn't actually necessarily have to do anything with humans connecting on their interests, their responses, their feelings, and it doesn't do as much as it could be to do that community stuff, right? Because a community isn't just people posting content, it's people not just people commenting, but there's so many other projects, and you see some of this trying really hard to happen on Steemit, where people are trying to create art projects together, and the platform doesn't really facilitate that. I mean, you can do it, but you could do that on Facebook. You can have a Facebook group. So what we're trying to figure out, and this is still in the figure out stage, is how do we set up our economic model and the whole thing to encourage all that other stuff in the middle, not just being superstars, but all that other stuff that allows people to really thrive and connect and feel connected and to feel part of something that we can. And that means that it's going to be a lot less about exponentially rewarding a few people at the top and trying to really do something for the people in the middle who form the huge bulk of the users. It's the people in the middle who actually make the site worth visiting and feel like you're part of something, as opposed to just reading someone's personal blog or getting like on someone's mailing list, right? It's a different experience.
Yeah, most definitely.
Go ahead.
I have like a totally random question. Well, actually, it's not random, right? But it's a question. Proof of stake, or is it going to be proof of work? The Dawn project.
I believe it's proof of stake in some form. So
Exactly.
I am not the one programming the blockchain, so I'm going to pass that off.
Okay, so it's proof of stake in some form, just like Brent said. That is to say that it's proof of stake using Tendermint as its blockchain engine, which basically makes it, more or less proof of stake with actually a quite large resemblance to BitShares or Steem.
Oh, all right. I like
So
that,
what
actually.
makes it different then?
The difference is, frankly, a lack of democracy.
So
Our equivalent of witnesses, validators, are not chosen democratically.
So is this going to be an anarchist platform? Like, is it going to draw in the anarchist crowd, or what crowd are you guys looking to draw in?
We actually don't want to draw on just one crowd. We might start with a couple of people who find the features that we're able to launch with the most attractive. But going back to that thing about human connection, it's not like this is the platform for anarchists. If you're building a platform that's supposed to reward the bulk of the users, to kind of reward that fat middle, right? And also reward the people at the top. We're not saying we don't reward them. It's just, instead of being exponential, rewards start to taper off, right? And that means that the people at the top still get paid really well. It's just not, they're not gonna get paid 1,000 times more than the people like 10% lower than them, because it changes the political and emotional feel of a platform when you do that. So the idea is we wanna have the site be able to help people build their own communities, instead of just being, this is a community for X. Instead of it, think of it as a blockchain-enabled community building platform, and then we're going to launch with like a minimal feature set that's the easiest for us to build, and we think fits like one user base that we think it fits really well, and we're identifying what that is. And it may identify us for us. We don't know. We're glad if people want to come and say, yes, this is what I want to be part of. This sounds like that thing that I was missing, or feels like things are off when I use other social networks and other systems. Then maybe they'll find us. I would love that. That would make our lives so much easier. So that's kind of where we're at right now, if that answers your question.
Can I just say that every time everyone's done talking, can we say donuts, please?
Okay.
You just say donuts, right?
Let's lighten the mood. It's donuts. So you were thinking about not including voting. So what would you have if you didn't have vote?
So
donuts.
So there's a couple things. So it's not like saying there is no voting or not voting. It's more like voting is a very one-dimensional thing, right? Like they originally just had up and down votes on Steemit, and then they have like this little slider. I don't even know what an up vote always means. Does it mean I like it? Do I think it's accurate? Do I think it's helpful to the community? Could it be any of the above? Those differences matter when you actually care about community, right? And so does the time frame. Like I said, if someone writes a piece of content that lasts for 3 years, maybe people vote up on it a lot, but maybe they just read it. Maybe it's a really helpful how-to guide. And it's also more important that it actually sticks around being visible than being buried in something, 1,000 posts ago. So it's more than just voting yes or no. It's also ability to like pin content or to treat content in different ways, beyond just saying I like it or I don't, right? So we're gonna allow a lot of things. So voting will probably exist. It will maybe look different. That's part of the thing we have to figure out for some of the economic model. Like we have a guiding philosophy, figuring out the exact math isn't there yet. But we do want to allow tipping. We want to allow things like electing people to have some sort of like arbitration authority at some point. There's a lot of things we've bounced around. It's just how much of them can we build right now to achieve something that's great for at least one community to do what they really need, and then build up extra features from there. So obviously not all of this is going to be launch features, but that's where we are. So does that help?
We go back to the philosophy behind it, because I thought the white paper was interesting. You talked about how the world is becoming so much more surveillance, and privacy is very important to you. And you even mentioned like smart glassware that keeps track of what you're drinking. I thought that was interesting. I've never heard of that.
That's kind of weird and scary.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that whole philosophy behind the project?
So one of the things we've talked about and we're figuring out how to implement it is so there's this weird thing where certain people really need privacy and really want it for very good reasons. And other people really want to be open in public for very good reasons. For instance, we're being very open in public right now because we want you to know about our project. So if we were just being secretive and not wanting anyone to know about us, then this wouldn't make sense, right? So there's this fight between people who want to have what they're doing secret and people who don't. And sometimes that could change in an instant, right? So there's this idea, kind of like there used to be, they seem to have gotten rid of it in Google Hangouts, where you could go into incognito mode or off the record mode in like chats and things like that, where if you want to, we'll have a way of sending things with like no traceable record, right? And then in other cases, you can have it be public as much as you like. So it's more about like controlling your privacy in a way where not even the system necessarily has a usable record, you know? So you can send encrypted stuff through the chain or off the chain even to other users, and they'll see it, but then it'll just evaporate, if that makes sense. So those are the questions we ask ourselves. It's like, how do we give people the privacy they want and need for the application and the community that they're building?
Nate, I'm gonna unmute you so you can ask some questions.
Hey, hi, nice to be here.
Nice to have you, mate.
I think you may have sent me some documentation before this public release about this project. So why do the validators need specific hardware?
So this has been one of those things that people freaked out a little bit about, and we have to figure out how to explain it better. They don't actually need specific hardware, but this goes back to the privacy question. So that hardware is supposed to be an open spec. So you know the exact software running on it, which is open source, and you know the exact hardware running on it, and we're getting it made so that there's nothing on it that's evil and corrupt, right? Like, so right now, because of the blockchain, it's not as big of a deal, like on things that are pure blockchain, that no one's listening in. But for some of the privacy stuff we've talked about, right, where we're trying to send messages across the system, but people want to keep it private or off the record or all these things, we don't really want bugs listening in. And so when we were having that conversation is when that was all written. And we're like, well, the only way we could really do that is if we knew that there was open hardware and we knew exactly what was running this stuff, so that we also knew, and we knew the image of the software, right? Like there's a checksum on the software running on known hardware that we know isn't bugged, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I still have quibbles with the processor you use because it's not an open processor, but that's the only issue I have.
Yeah, we're doing the best we can, but that has changed, right? So we're coming up with ways where we don't need that. It really depends. Like, I mean, so that's the thing about this white paper. Like, we're probably going to rip a lot of it down, because if we give specifics that are liable to change as we come up with different technical solutions, then it tends to confuse people, and that's happened. So we're probably going to talk more about the philosophy and the stuff that's much more locked down, and probably update it sometime this week as soon as one of us has like enough spare moments to sit there and like write and proofread something.
Yeah, awesome.
But yeah. So because that we've gotten a lot of questions about that, and we get it. Like we want people to understand that we're coming from a place where we really want to protect people, and that's actually not easy. Like, especially when you want both open and closed, and sometimes in the middle type stuff. And yeah, like it's not easy. It's not an easy solution to find.
That's interesting. You say you're going to protect people. So my question is, what are your plans for fake news?
Wow,
Will
is
you
that
be
on the
protecting
money?
people against fake news?
Yeah, like that's like more of a question for the world. We don't know. But one of the things is, if we're building like a community building thing, right? Like, it's one of those things where instead of us as the Dawn Network saying this is fake, we hereby ban, you know, communities can figure out and already do what they want to listen to. And if people don't want to, if people choose to go live in a bubble, I'm not aware of anything anyone can do to make them not live in a bubble. Right? Like, you could have a government mandated bubble like they have in China, where only, you know, state approved stuff really goes out. But that's just not a problem for us to solve. And the way we're doing this with communities is we feel that a community that's well connected and has a clear purpose and has a feeling of connection with one another, I don't think it's going to matter as much because it's not as much of a mass broadcast medium. It's just not as much of a pure mass media platform, right? Like if we're having ways for communities to build themselves and find connections, and that members of the Dawn Network can be part of multiple communities, there's definitely a threat of people spewing BS and having it circulate. But at the same time, communities can also, because of the blockchain, say, hey, these are bad actors, right? Like if people are sending it over the actual chain and it's there, people can actually say, you know what, these people who are posting the stuff to the chain are bad actors. Right, and because there is that accountability and traceability aspect.
So you will have some kind of system of moderation then?
Yeah, but instead of us as the Dawn Network moderating stuff, it'll be more like those communities can accept or reject sources of information and sources of things into their, their universe, right? And different people, and it's more like real social stuff, right? You choose who you talk to, you choose who you have beers with, you choose who you hang out with. We'd like to think that people in this will be more apt to connect. We have some technology we're looking at. I don't want to go deep into it, where we want to actively help people connect. One of the things we think is a failure with most systems is that it's really hard to find the people you would want to connect with. And one of the failures of systems that exist right now is because they don't help people connect with people who are a little bit different than them or might have an interesting perspective and guide that relationship a little bit, like help them find ways to like each other first before they start fighting. That causes these silos that are the real problem. So if we have a system that actually says, you know what, you should talk to, say, hey Jill, you should talk to Chuck about baseball because you're both into that. Well, maybe they disagree about some political stuff, but they don't choose to talk about that first. Whereas if you're on like Facebook, that's probably the first thing you see. Especially right now, right? But we can say, you know what, here's where you have commonalities, and help people find ways to have conversations that are productive and good, as long as people choose to make certain information available about themselves. But a lot of people do. I mean, a lot of people want to be public about certain things because they want to have conversations, connections about those things. So why not help people have the right connection in the right context to gain some compassion for one another so that they can discuss other things that are maybe more contentious, but not start there.
So there was like one particular sentence from the white paper that I didn't understand. I wonder if you could help me with it. I'll just read the part that confused me. It's a decentralized, compatible, gRPC speaking, Byzantine, fault-tolerant network of application-specific blockchains. For those of us whose heads just exploded, could you just give us like both broad and specific definitions of each of those words?
Okay, so I think that whole section needs to be rewritten because even I'm not exactly sure. I'm not one of the people writing the blockchain.
Basically, we're not building a single chain, because general purpose chains, what I mean by general purpose, right, is like if you took Steam and then you added messaging and then you added a whole bunch of features that people want for good reasons, what you would come up with is an inoperable system, actually. And we don't want to give users an inoperable system. And so, frankly, in a way that's fairly similar to the multi-chain stuff that Steam started speaking of recently, we will have chains that interoperate with different validators, with different protocols, et cetera, et cetera. Okay,
so it's a multi-chain blockchain.
Well, it's not a single blockchain. I don't know exactly how it's being implemented, how tech like this is being implemented in Graphene. So, it's not one blockchain, it's multiple blockchains, with the first one being this content platform. And really, we're going to focus on that until it's out and done. So frankly, yes, Brenna's quite right. That thing in the white paper should probably be changed.
Just in case I missed it, which I'm pretty sure I didn't, how are validators going to be chosen or created?
Validators buy keys.
And if I don't know what that means, because I'm new to the cryptocurrency world.
Sure. So basically, validators buy keys means that there's going to be a key to run a validator, right? You're going to have a crypto token key, like, a cryptographic key that says you're a valid validator. They're not universally for sale. Like you could walk into a store and say, I'd like a validator, please. Like they're meant to be screened. They're not super expensive, but we want people who have really good hardware on really fat pipes, who are willing to dedicate, we want people to really buy into the system, who are willing to run like really powerful nodes, especially right now. because we need that capacity. Longer term, prices will drop and it will be a lot more democratic. But like if someone's running a validator node, even if everyone likes them, if they're running a really terrible computer and it's bad for the network, that's a problem. So that's more of like, there's sort of a combination of funding needs, hardware needs. Are they really serious and not going to just fall off the earth when we're trying to launch types of things where there's a buy-in price, but it's also to make sure that they're serious, right? We don't want people who are like, oh, that's cool, and then just wander away at like the worst possible moment.
So you're looking for long-term investors.
Long-term stakeholders even. Basically, you know, like one of the things that we're requiring of validators is get 2 internet connections. Why? Because we don't want your internet line to go on. So things like that. And, you know, Bren's got the description pretty well down, I think.
I like that. I like that. That pretty much cleared it up for me. And I had one freaking great question. If I missed it, which I don't think I did, but if I did, how are you guys going to combat bots?
Well, bots work off of APIs, and we're going to be selective about what we expose as an API that is easily writable against, you know. And then the other thing is like humans are only so fast, right? So a human can only type so fast, upvote things so fast. You could write a bot probably at some level to do things like a human, but in a bunch of ways, we're making it so that there's just not the economic incentive to be a bot, right? Like if you're a bot and if that bot provides enough value to a community, then it's not that big of a deal. But if it doesn't and it's there just spamming, right, then quickly it finds itself excluded and it's spamming to itself and no one cares and nothing's happening, right? So that's one of those things where depending on like all the other things that we have in play and we're figuring out, then we're going to come in there and say, okay, now that we know how this economic model needs to work, and now that we have all these other things set up, what would a bot trying to, like, how would people attack this system with an automated machine, right? And then how can we detect that, deflect that, and so on. I'm looking more at that user experience level of how do you use the system to have genuine, like this is my big thing that I have in like big letters, genuine human connection.
So it's every like design a blockchain with emotions then, right? Like a blockchain with emotion.
Well, the blockchain is just a storage medium, but the site itself, like however we store the data that we deliver to people to generate this connection, the actual experience of using the site and using the stuff that's on the chain needs to facilitate genuine human connection to other genuine humans. So if bots are allowed to exist, those bots have to do something that fits that philosophy, right? Like they can't sit there and spam people because that makes people tune out. So we'll be really aggressive about that, right? So I mean, if there's anything for anyone to take away from this is to think about that question and realize that that's what we're trying to build and how we want the site to feel. And that's going to be different. At the same time, we aren't saying that we're not going to support things that we feel have a genuine place for some people, right? Like people can have individual web pages or they could have their own personal blog. People obviously have a need to express themselves in that kind of free form, leave me alone way.
Yeah.
So that's okay too, but we want to have them be able to kind of go back and forth, right? Like I can have my personal blog and have it just be my little space of the internet. But then I can also turn around and really connect with people, and I can join those two people, right? Like if people like my blog, like even this is in real life, right? Like if people like my blog and they send me an email and they happen to be somewhere and we want to go get lunch or whatever, like I've had that happen, right? Like I've had it happen where I end up going out to lunch with someone because they found some stuff I wrote on the internet that was just kind of cast into the wind, my thoughts. But then I had a genuine human connection. That doesn't happen as much as I feel it should on social media that says it's supposed to be social, but I find that it actually makes people farther apart. And it makes them feel connected, but not really kind of halfway sometimes. And I don't like that. And I think we can do better.
You see, I'm loving this already. I mean, I was confused. Not really. I wasn't confused. But the fact that you want to put emotion in this means that me and Beans can get married on your guys' platform, right, Beans? Because look, it's like blockchain with emotion, Beans. And we can have our own blog. I'm just saying.
What about the name for the project? How did you come up with Dawn and Ray? And that word, I still don't understand what the Byzantine means. Is this like sort of the dawn of the Neo-Byzantine Empire? Or?
Byzantine.
Byzantine, okay.
Oh man.
So long time ago, I quit my job and started working on open technology projects, and I called that Dawn. And over time, I changed the name. And well, this was looking real good, right?
Yeah, I like this one.
So it's Dawn.
I like that attitude. It's looking.
The
real
answer
good.
is he liked that name. He was really insistent about it. So we were like, you know what, whatever. Like it's a name.
And Ray, did they just kind of go together, Ray and Don?
Rays of sunlight.
See, I thought they were gonna say Ray from Star Wars. I was really hoping it was gonna be Ray from Star Wars.
You know what? You can go with Ray from Star Wars too. That's fine.
Awesome.
Spelled a bit different, but you know, whatever.
I have a quick question. So you said you're basically giving out the keys to trusted sources, which is fine, but presumably it's a public key, private key based system for assigning blocks. I assume because you're using Tendermint. How are we to trust that you don't have all the private keys for all the validators that you're sending the keys to? Because if you have the validators' keys, then you can sign blocks with malicious transactions in them.
Oh no, we could do terrible things. I'm sorry. No, it's the truth. It's not the same as Bitcoin. And that's that.
I like that answer.
Yeah, this is not like fundamentally meant to be like Bitcoin where it's a pure currency system. So this is one of the things we might do is when we sell someone a validator that we allow them to generate a key, right? Like, and then we do a transaction where they give us, their public key, and right, we figure that out. But there's also the question of, and this is something that's come up, is some of the security problems with what if we do have really bad actors? How can we also get the system to work as a whole against like large scale threats? We don't have a clear answer to both those threats and what that would look like yet. So it's quite possible that we won't have those keys. Like it's very easy for us to sell a validator that we only have a public key for.
Awesome. So there's an option. It's not just
there's a solution. Is it solved now? No.
Okay, so just in the future, you're going to have a distribution network. You think that won't allow you guys to have the private keys?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say either way on that. We're just not far enough along on that. But my actual point about this particular question is, oh no, we could do terrible things, which is the case with any web platform. If you don't trust us at all, please, for the love of God, don't use our platform. We're not Bitcoin.
I love it. C Blue had a question I'm going to ask. What are the developers' level of experience in the blockchain technology?
Well, let's see. Not massive. We are relatively new to building blockchains, and that's why we're exploring totally new applications of blockchain tech.
It's also why we're using things like Tendermint. Like Tendermint has very experienced devs building the core system, and we are part of their Slack, and we're talking to them, and we had calls with their COO the other day, right? Like, so we're kind of getting help from people who are way more experienced than us as we build an application on top of a blockchain.
Awesome. I like that. You guys are getting the experience.
And we admit our lack of experience in some things. Now, the developers themselves, like myself and Baba Beta and some others, do have years and years of experience. I've been a developer for 7 years doing mostly content management system stuff for big enterprise clients and different huge integration things. And Baba Beta is, however you pronounce that, Tuan is his real name, but he's been working on a bunch of different systems for years. He's really good, and he's writing a lot of the core tech.
All right, C Blue, you're up, brother.
Righto, I'm going to dive in and ask a question. I've been listening for a while, and I think I'm just wondering, because as I've listened to the conversation and how it's described, it seems to be in a fairly embryonic state. So I wonder, what is it that you're looking to achieve by talking about it today on Voices of the Underground?
I think a couple things. I mean, one is to just let people know that it exists and it's on people's radar. To field questions is also good because it gives us feedback on the concerns, the interests, and things of users, right? Like we do want to find a community that really wants to use a platform like what we described and that fits our philosophy. So if there's a community that says, you know what, this sounds really key to us, then great, we can code against the specific needs of that community as we push towards our first, kind of alpha beta release. And of course, if there are people who want to contribute or participate, then that's great too.
And that alpha beta release, when is that planned for?
I think in the next few months.
Whoever has a question, who are the current 5 validators?
Well, because I haven't asked them if I can tell you their names, I'm not going to tell you their names. Right?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. That was kind of one of those questions. Oh man!
It's whoever wants to get in and be a validator, really.
We will ask them if we can say any of their names.
Oh, no worries.
The white paper is out of date apparently, so should we expect a time when it would be like set in stone?
It'll be updated a lot to talk more about core philosophy and things that are more stable in the next week. I think it'll be probably finalized inside of 1 to 2 months once we figure out some of the economic model stuff. I mean, we'll describe it in vagueness, but like some of the stuff we actually need to find and test and try to model out as best we can, because it'll be harder to change later. So yeah, that's where kind of things stand.
Let's see, Sensei, I only have one more question. How will changes be implemented? How will changes be implemented on this platform, such as hard forks?
So I actually see a couple questions, so I'll go ahead and address those. So hard forks, because their validators are buying into this ecosystem, it's one of those things that they're going to agree to, is that they're going to have a say in it. It's not going to be like, we hereby demand, but if people are part of that system, they're agreeing that they're going to do the forks, right? Like that's part of the thing. And so it's not like Bitcoin where just anybody can throw up a node. Like that's part of that thing, right? Like there does need to be some order and stability in the world, because it's been a huge problem for Bitcoin that there are different new technologies that can make Bitcoin scale better, but it's really hard for them to roll them out, and that causes issues. And we want to avoid that both for ourselves and for our users. The other one is, I see a question from Apple Crisp about independent programmers. We are going to encourage and help them develop things because we do want to expose a bunch of APIs that are very easy to use, that a lot of thought has gone into how do we make this easier to use. We have things like a WordPress pseudo compatibility for WordPress themes. Like if people want to do stuff like they build a site on Dawn and they use WordPress themes, then obviously not all the WordPress plugins and stuff are going to work. But if they want to just import a theme that's by itself, just a visual style, that will run. And we have some of that running already because we were able to find some hooks for Golang that worked for that. So we do want things to be easy on a programmer level to talk to the chain, provided that it's not like heavily bot oriented. And then if people are going to run bots, we might actually find a way to like have a bot API where we know it's a bot running around on the chain, like it's not the same as a normal user, and we expose specific functionality for that. That's one of those things we've bounced around. So there we go.
Question: how's the login process going to be? Gonzo asked. Are we going to need Facebook or?
We are not currently planning to require someone to have one of those accounts.
Awesome. All right, Beans, you got any more questions?
No, it's all been really interesting. Does anybody else have any more questions? Nate or anyone?
If there's anything you guys want to say, Bryn, Crypto Hippie, Jacob, throw it out there.
Well, so I know we're talking to a Steam audience right now, and actually one of the things that I'd like to speak to is interoperability. We wouldn't exist. Our collaboration, our collective, whatever the hell you want to call us, it would not exist if it wasn't for Steemit.com. There is Steam DNA in what we're building. There can be no doubt of that. And so with that very clearly stated, we would love to hear ideas from the community on how these platforms can synergize.
So you mean how you could kind of work together?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Oh, that was great. All right. I just want to thank you for showing up. I mean, you guys didn't have to, you did. Had to answer some hard questions, and you did, and it was great.
Thank you guys for coming. It was really, really interesting.
Oh, and the next time, I like you because I like when you scream. It's fucking awesome. The next time you guys want to drop some shit, please come over here. But again, I fucking love the screaming. It's so awesome. Thank you guys for showing up. Thanks for the questions. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Cebu. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you, whoever. Gonzo. Yeah, get the fuck out of here now. Not you guys, Crypto Hippie and Bryn. You guys stay. But the rest of you guys, get the fuck out of here.
This is a private party. Thanks, guys.